This is live from New Delhi. You're watching DT India News Hour. DT India, India's voice to the world. I'm Sakal Bhattan. Coming up in the next hour. 3 attacks rock United States on first day of 2025. India's Prime Minister condemns the cowardly terrorist attack in New Orleans. Bangladesh's Chattogram court rejects bail plea of Hindu priest Chinmoy Das in sedition case. ISKCON Dhaka denounces the arrest, condemns violence attacks on Hindus. 27 migrants, including women and children, die after 2 boats capsize off central Tunisia. D. Gukesh, Manu Bakar and Harmanpreet Singh and Praveen Kumar to be honoured with India's highest sporting awards. Well, hours after 3 separate gun violence incidents at the very outset of the new year rocked and shocked United States, police are investigating whether an explosion outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas is linked to the deadly car ramming attack in New Orleans.
3 attacks rocked the United States just on the first day of 2025. At least 15 people were killed and dozens injured when a driver rammed a pickup truck into a crowd during New Year's celebrations in New Orleans on Wednesday.
The FBI also reported to me that mere hours before the attack, he posted videos on social media indicating that he was inspired by ISIS, expressing a desire to kill. The ISIS flag was found in his vehicle, which he rented to conduct this attack.
The FBI identified the attacker as Shamshuddin Jabbar. A flag linked to the Islamic State group was discovered in the vehicle. Improvised explosive devices were found in the vicinity. The attacker was later killed in a shootout with the police.
We do not believe that Jabbar was solely responsible. We are aggressively running down every lead, including those of his known associates.
So who was Shamshuddin Jabbar? The attacker, Shamshuddin Jabbar, was a 42-year-old US citizen who once served in Afghanistan. Jabbar was in the regular army from March 2007 until January 2015 and then in the Army Reserve from January 2015 until July 2020. He was deployed to Afghanistan from February 2009 to January 2010 and held the rank of Staff Sergeant at the end of service. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi condemned the attack. He posted on X saying, "We strongly condemn the cowardly terrorist attack in New Orleans. Our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families. May they find strength and solace as they heal from this tragedy." Another attack was in Las Vegas. A Tesla Cybertruck exploded in flames outside the Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas on Wednesday, killing the driver and injuring 7 others. Police is investigating whether an explosion outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas is linked to the deadly car ramming attack in New Orleans.
We're absolutely investigating any connectivity to what happened in New Orleans, as well as other attacks that have been occurring around the world. We're not ruling anything out yet.
New York was rocked by mass shooting. 10 people were injured in a mass shooting in the New York City borough of Queens late on New Year's Day. The United States has not been rocked by trucks for the first time. In May 2017, a US Navy veteran rammed his car into pedestrians in Manhattan's crowded Times Square, killing a woman and injuring 22 people. In October 2017, an Uzbek national plowed a rented truck onto a Manhattan bike path, killing 8 people and injuring 11. In 2018, a man plowed a rented van into dozens of people in downtown Toronto, killing 11 people and injuring 15. A Wisconsin man was convicted in 2022 of killing 6 people and injuring dozens when he drove his SUV into a Christmas parade near Milwaukee, Wisconsin in November 2021. Vehicle attacks are not limited to the United States. It has become increasingly common around the world. The US Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency calls these vehicle attacks a significant threat in the United States. With Huzail Ahmed, Tanvi Taneja for DD India.
So as gun violence continue to plague communities around the world, particularly in the United States, and to talk about that in context of gun violence in US, Professor W.P.S. Sidhu from Center for Global Affairs in New York University joining us live on this broadcast. Thank you very much, Professor Sidhu. Such a pleasure, sir, talking to you always. So first things first, the FBI is investigating the incident as an act of terrorism, but it believes that it doesn't have, and it believes that the driver acted alone. But then they're still, probing for some more evidence to get a clear picture. But first of all, what do you think of this, the timings of it, and whatever the US media is reporting in terms of the findings of the investigative agencies?
Well, good to be with you again, and thank you for having me. And of course, this has not been a very peaceful start for the new year. But as we've seen, these kind of attacks have not been, are not unusual. We've seen them over the holiday markets in Europe. There was also a similar ISIS threat to the Taylor Swift concert in Austria, which actually had to be cancelled. So I think certainly the timing of this has to do with, in many ways, ISIS trying to just literally and figuratively wave the flag that they are still very much a force to contend with. And that's, I think, a very important message. Also, the timing of this, with the change in or the transition of the administration from the Biden to the Trump, may also be another reason why this timing is crucial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a bit more on the change of guard, which is on the anvil. In fact, it's already happened. It's just a matter of a few days officially when Donald Trump takes over as the president of the United States of America. But then what does this really suggest? The timings of the attack, and there is a pattern to it. I mean, in the last, 48 hours, we're looking at 3 such onslaughts.
Absolutely. Although I would probably discount or not include the New York attack in this one. We don't seem to have enough information about that. But there is certainly a possibility that the Las Vegas attack and the New Orleans one may be related, although there are also some significant differences there as well. For example, the ISIS flag was not found in Las Vegas. But that being said, I mean, quite clearly, there may be presidents who come in wanting to not focus on foreign policy, but very often events like this will force that onto the agenda. We saw this, for example, in the case of 9/11, where President George W. Bush had a very different agenda when he came to office, but then actually went on to launch the global war on terror. Similarly, the incoming administration of President Trump has not been very keen on engaging on foreign policy issues in general, but also terrorism in particular. But the fact that if there is terrorism on American soil, then clearly, he and the administration will have to respond.
What about the gun culture, gun lobby? In the sense, has there been enough administrative work aimed at reducing gun violence or the pattern of it, including passing the most significant gun safety legislation in the nearly 30 years? From successive administration, from one campaign to the other, the gun lobby, the gun culture, all of that has been, one of the rallying points. But then what also we have seen in last so many decades, such incidents making it to global headlines. But nothing seems to be stopping this.
No, absolutely. And in that sense, the United States seems to be in this very unusual situation. People who who support, for example, the Second Amendment, people of the National Rifle Association, for example, which is the right to bear arms, will probably argue that the laws are going too far. But for those, who are concerned about this gun violence and really starting the new year with this mass atrocities, although, guns were only used in New York in this particular case, just underlines that how much more sort of needs to be done and is honestly not being done enough. And that's a tragedy. Also, you might remember there is also, the attack, which was what is complicating the situation more is now the role of so-called ghost guns which are being made using 3D printers. And this is what we saw in the attack on the CEO of United Health, who was killed in New York.
Okay. I was just reading, there are states who have also been, mulling over, they've taken steps to pass their own gun legislations. Do you think in the context of United States and the change of guard or the Trump administration taking over, now is the time to give a very hard look or relook at passing some stiff gun legislations?
One would hope so, but I think certainly, those hopes are probably going to be belied by the Trump administration, which is much closer to the National Rifle Association, the NRA, and concerns about gun control as well. Besides, even if there is, even if the federal government tries to do more, some of the states have their own sort of policies. But as some of the attacks in New York in particular, many of these guns are coming from out of the state. So, for example, New York has some very, very strict laws related to guns. But the shooting and the assassination, which happened, by this young man, Mangione, was actually, from Pennsylvania. And he made the gun there, which was not traceable, and then brought it into New York as well. So it is unfortunate, but I think just to add to the pessimism of the start of the new year, I don't think we can expect very much.
Okay. There's also this talk going on about there could be laws coming into effect in the year 2025 in US. What are you picking up? Like, what's the general banter?
Well, as we've seen, there's going to be some pushback on a lot of the Biden administration laws as well, particularly related to the environment and energy, but also in terms of government regulation as well. But I think we're starting to see some very interesting tensions already within the Trump camp, as it were. One of them relates to H-1B visas, which I know is of great interest and concern to countries like India as well. So there are some who are very supportive of that measure, but others who are thinking that this is actually taking away American jobs from Americans. And therefore they need to have a pushback on that as well. So it's going to be a very interesting year.
One final question. In 2024 alone, I was just looking at some database maintained by the Gun Violence America. They are saying that there have been nearly at least 500 mass shootings, and the deadliest, of course, being the one which took place in Chicago suburb in January, killing 8 people. You think there's going to be now some pressure on Donald Trump when he takes over in few weeks to do something substantial, like some iron fist policy to ensure that this stops? Terror attack or no terror attack, but gun violence, vehicle attacks, all this has been like an order of the day there in the US from different parts of the country.
Right. Donald Trump is proved to be immune to pressure. We've seen that in the first administration, but also that's something that, we might see here again. But we might see a different kind of response, as it were, from Donald Trump, which may be, and again, you can see parallels with this first administration, he may, for example, evoke a Muslim ban, a ban of, sort of people coming in from Muslim countries. And that, of course, is not going to stop the kinds of attacks in New Orleans, where the perpetrator was an American citizen, radicalized, possibly online, and those are the kind of new challenges that they're going to face. It is possible that they might do more about radicalization online, but let's not forget that while we're focusing on this attack, with links to the Islamic State, we also have equal attacks or equal amount of concern with right-wing white supremacists who've also been radicalized online as well. So I think, you may see the Trump administration trying to nuance between the two, and I think that's going to be part of the problem as well, because it's not going to solve the problem to have this piecemeal approach. We need to have a much more, comprehensive approach.
We'll leave it there. Such a pleasure talking to you, Professor W.P.S. Sidhu from Center for Global Affairs in New York University, joining us live on, and of course, sharing your thoughts on this very, very critical matter. Thank you, sir. Thank you. And still to come on DD India News Hour. This is what we have lined up for you on the other side. Impeached South Korean President Yoon resists arrest. Question is still, how long can he resist or escape an arrest? Taiwan's troubled waters are back in the spotlight as Chinese jets conduct patrolling exercises. And natural gas pipeline supplying Russian energy to Europe runs dry.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked, we just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Sakal Bhatt. Let's move on to some news coming in from South Korea, where the supporters and opponents of the impeached President Yoon Suk Yeol have clashed with police near his residence in Seoul. Yoon remains holed up for a third day in his compound, defying an arrest warrant. He's also accused of a failed martial law bid. He vowed to fight until the end in a letter to his supporters. Meanwhile, the Constitutional Court continues his impeachment trial with the next hearing set for Friday. South Korea's impeached President Yoon told supporters in a letter that he will fight until the end as he faces an attempt by authorities to arrest him over his short-lived imposition of martial law last month. It was unclear when and how police would make the arrest and whether the Presidential Security Service, which has blocked access by investigators with a search warrant to Yoon's office and official residence, would try to stop it. Meanwhile, South Korea's Constitutional Court held an inauguration ceremony for two new judges, Cho Han-chang and Jung Ye-son, on Thursday. Both the justices were appointed by acting President Choi Sang-mok on December 31st. Their inauguration on Thursday brings the number of justices to 8. The ceremony was held just a day before the trial on suspended President Yoon's martial law bid. The court is set to decide the fate of both Yoon and Prime Minister Han Duck-soo, who was the first acting president after Yoon's impeachment, on whether to oust them from their positions completely or restore their powers. South Korea's constitution requires 6 of its 9 justices to agree on the ousting of an impeached president. More news from South Korea. The authorities are now intensifying their investigation into the deadly crash of a Jeju Air flight. The crash, which claimed the lives of 179 people, is being closely examined, with multiple raids carried out at key locations, including the airline's office and Muan Airport. Here's a report by DD India's Harshita Oberoi.
Police conducted sweeping raids at Muan Airport, Jeju Air's Seoul office and a regional aviation hub on Thursday morning. These searches are part of a high-stakes investigation into one of South Korea's deadliest air disasters. The cockpit voice recorder, a critical piece of evidence, has been recovered and is being analyzed. Acting President Choi Sang-mok announced at a disaster management meeting that the audio conversion of the recorder's data is expected to be completed by Friday.
해당 기종에 대한 국민들의 우려가 큰 만.
The data extracted from the voice recorder for the accident investigation will be converted into audio by tomorrow. An analysis of the flight recorder is scheduled to begin at the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board with the participation of our investigators.
비행 기록 장치는 우리 조
The flight data recorder, another crucial device, has been shipped to the United States for analysis at the National Transportation Safety Board. Experts from both South Korea and the US, including representatives from Boeing, are working at the crash site in southwestern Muan. Investigators are focusing on several potential causes, including faulty landing gear, a possible bird strike that may have triggered mechanical failure, and lapses in maintenance. The cockpit voice recorder is expected to provide critical insights into the crew's final communications. Meanwhile, officials have pledged full transparency and accountability. Acting President Choi emphasized the urgency of the probe, stating that immediate action would follow if inspections reveal lapses in safety protocols. The catastrophic crash of Jeju Air Flight 7C2216 has claimed 179 lives, plunging the nation into mourning. With so many lives lost, this investigation has become a national priority. The people of South Korea are demanding answers, not only to understand what went wrong, but to ensure such a tragedy never happens again. Harshita Oberoi, DD India.
Now let's shift focus to China. Taiwan tussle where at least 22 Chinese military aircrafts, including fighter jets, are conducting a joint combat readiness patrol around Taiwan in conjunction with Chinese warships. This despite Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te expressing his willingness to exchange or engage with China, adding that the exchange or engagement with China should be more equal, more dignified, healthy and orderly. Now this is something which doesn't seem to be going well with the Beijing. DD India's Mihir Maikuru has more.
Taiwan's troubled waters are back in the spotlight. Even in 2025, Chinese warplanes and warships have launched their first combat patrol around the island, keeping tensions high in the region. This show of force follows Taiwan President Lai Ching-te's reiterating his willingness to engage with Beijing.
I still want to stress this. Taiwan hopes to have healthy and orderly exchanges with China under the principles of reciprocity and dignity.
But President Lai's remarks have drawn Beijing's ire.
Taiwan must be prepared for danger in times of peace, continue to increase its defense budget, strengthen its defense capabilities, and demonstrate its determination to protect the country.
Beijing, which labels Lai a separatist, escalates its rhetoric and actions. China, which views Taiwan as a breakaway province, conducts near-daily military operations in the skies and waters around the island.
The people on both sides of Taiwan Strait are one family. No one can sever our family bonds. And no one can stop the historical trend of national reunification.
The Taiwan issue also fuels tensions between Beijing and Washington. China has imposed sanctions on 10 US defense firms for their involvement in arms sales to Taiwan, intensifying the standoff. Beijing has added subsidiaries of Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, and Raytheon to its unreliable entities list. Sanctions bar firms from export-import activities and new investments in China, and senior executives are prohibited from entering China. As the Taiwan Strait remains a flashpoint, global eyes are on the region where the balance of power is increasingly tested. Mihir Maikuru reporting for DD India.
27 migrants, including women and children, have died after two boats capsized off Tunisia's Kerkena Islands. 83 people, all from sub-Saharan Africa, were rescued while searches continue for others still missing, according to Tunisian authorities. This tragedy follows a series of deadly shipwrecks near Sfax in recent weeks, highlighting the ongoing risks faced by migrants attempting to reach Europe. Well, Ukraine has halted the transport of Russian gas to Europe through its territory after a key deal with Moscow expired on Wednesday. The refusal comes nearly 3 years of its full-scale conflict with Russia and comes after Europe has already drastically cut Moscow's share of its gas imports. Ukraine's energy ministry says it ended the deal in the interest of national security, while the Ukrainian president himself has called the move one of the Moscow's greatest defeats. Raghav Kumar Jha of DD India gets us this report.
A major natural gas pipeline supplying Russian energy to Europe ran dry Wednesday after Ukraine's refusal to extend the decades-old transit agreement. The move marks the end of an era in which many European countries kept themselves warm using the gas pumped by Russia. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in a social media post hailed the end of the Russian gas transit across his country as a significant defeat for Moscow. However, Kyiv's refusal to extend the deal is not painless for Ukraine, as it's losing up to $1 billion a year in transit fees that it charged Russia to use its pipeline. So far, other European countries are concerned. Most of them no longer depend on Russian gas as they have diversified their supply to the United States, Qatar and others following Russia's February 2022 attack on Ukraine. Nevertheless, halting the pipeline saw European Union natural gas prices rise to €50, their highest since the €330 spike in 2022. Turning off the taps may also impact Austria, Slovakia and particularly Moldova, which is not part of the European Union, all of whom rely on Russian gas more than most in Europe. However, Hungary will keep receiving Russian gas via the Turk Stream pipeline under the Black Sea. In a televised government meeting, pro-Moscow leader of breakaway Moldovan region of Transnistria, Vadim Krasnolevsky, said that the region is facing energy crisis after an agreement to allow the transit of Russian gas to Europe via Ukraine ended on Wednesday. He added that gas has been cut off from consumers in Transnistria. Ukrainian President Zelensky urged the United States to increase its energy supplies to Europe, saying increased imports from allies would help Europe overcome its energy dependence on Russia. Bureau Report, DD India.
Staying with Russia, Ukraine, now they seem to have exchanged intense drone attacks on Wednesday. The Russian Defense Ministries claim to have downed over 30 Ukrainian drones across multiple regions, prompting temporary airport closures. Moscow also targeted Ukraine's energy facilities and military infrastructures using drones, missiles and artillery. Meanwhile, Ukraine reports intercepting 63 out of 111 Russian drones launched since Tuesday night. Kyiv has also carried out a high-precision strike on a Russian command post in the Kursk region on Thursday. In a significant development, the Syrian independence flag was raised outside the Saudi Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Riyadh. This follows the arrival of the Syrian delegation led by newly appointed Foreign Minister Asad Hassan al-Shibani for its first official visit abroad since Bashar al-Assad's ousting. The delegation also includes Defense Minister Murhaf Abu Kasra. Upon arriving in the kingdom, the Syrian foreign minister expressed hope to open a new bright page in Syrian-Saudi relations that befits the long shared history between the two countries. Well, Elon Musk has called for the release of British far-right activist Tommy Robinson in his latest UK intervention. Using his platform X, Musk also criticised Prime Minister Keir Starmer over his tenure as chief state prosecutor during a child grooming scandal. This follows backlash over Musk's support for Germany's far-right AfD party and claims that he may donate millions to Nigel Farage's Reform UK party. And still to come on DT India News Hour. Coming up next. On the other side, we discuss the situation in Bangladesh after a court rejected the bail plea of the Hindu priest Chinmoy Krishnadas.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and before we move on, let's do a quick recap of the headlines we're tracking for you. 3 attacks rock United States on first day of 2025. India's Prime Minister condemns the cowardly terror attack in New Orleans. Bangladesh's Chattogram court rejects bail plea of Hindu priest Chinmoy Krishnadas in sedition case. ISKCON Dhaka denounces the arrest, condemns violence attacks on Hindus. 27 migrants, including women and children, die after 2 boats capsize off central Tunisia. Well, in a bit of a setback to the followers of the former ISKCON priest, court in Bangladesh on Thursday rejected the bail plea of Chinmoy Krishnadas Brahmachari, who was arrested by the Dhaka police earlier on November 25th in connection with the sedition case. Das's arrest in November last year prompted significant outrage. The Thursday bail hearing, which lasted for about 30 minutes, was held under tight security. Weeks after Chinmoy's bail hearing in December was rejected by the court then amid a lot of chaos. More details follows. In a significant development, Bangladesh court on Thursday rejected bail to former ISKCON priest Chinmoy Krishnadas. This development came as a bench of 11 lawyers of the Supreme Court represented Chinmoy Krishnadas's bail hearing in Chattogram. The Metropolitan Sessions judge rejected the plea after hearing arguments from both sides, which continued for around 30 minutes. Reacting to the court's decision against Das's plea, former High Commissioner of India to Bangladesh, Veena Sikri, has called it travesty of justice, questioning the handling of the unrest by interim regime following Das's arrest.
Well, I think it's very sad. It's tragic. It's a travesty of justice that Chinmoy Krishnadas Brahmachari has been once again denied bail. And, even the reason for his arrest, they've charged him with a very serious charge of sedition. But there's no evidence that has been given. The interim regime led by Professor Mohammad Yunus, he didn't even talk about the case of Chinmoy Krishnadas. He just spoke about the lawyer who had died. What is happening in Bangladesh today with the minorities is really beyond belief. It really goes beyond any norms in any country.
Reportedly, Krishna Prabhudas now plans to approach the High Court. Meanwhile, India-based Rights and Risk Analysis Group or RRAG, led by Suhas Chakma, have called the bail denial by Bangladesh court an attempt to silence the Hindu minorities by the interim government. It may be recalled on November 25th, 2024, the former ISKCON leader was arrested from Hazrat Shah Jalal International Airport at 4:30 p.m. by the Detective Branch of Dhaka Metropolitan Police on sedition charges. The development triggered violent protests by Chinmoy Das's followers, not only in Bangladesh but across the world, and has continuously raised questions of handling of the situation on ground by the interim government of the Bangladesh. Sakal Bhatt's report for DD India. Ambassador Veena Sikri, former Indian High Commissioner to Bangladesh, joins us on this story. Thank you very much. Namaste, ma'am. We just heard you in the story itself, ma'am, but just to give us an insight, what was this hearing which lasted for around 30 minutes all about, and the merits of the case, and why, on what grounds was this Chinmoy Krishnadas's bail plea rejected?
Well, actually, there's been no ground at all provided. I mean, it's just today, on the 2nd of January, they actually heard the case for the first time, because the previous two times, when there was a bail hearing in December, there was no lawyer who was allowed to appear for Chinmoy Krishnadas Brahmacharya. And this is a very tragic incident where the treatment of the minorities is being shown in a way that nobody is caring for their interests. All that Chinmoy Krishnadas Brahmacharya has been doing is organized a group called the Sanatani Jagran Jyot. So he is trying to organize the people. We know that this time, although there have been a huge range of attacks, cruel and bestial attacks against the minorities, the Hindus, the Buddhists and the Christians, yet the minorities themselves are determined to stay on in Dhaka, in Bangladesh. They're saying, we are citizens of this country, we want our rights. So under this Sanatani Jagran Jyot, Chinmoy Krishnadas Brahmachari and others have made a list of 8-point demand to the regime in Bangladesh. And they're very simple request, actually, saying that they want a ministry for the protection of minorities, they want a law for the protection of minorities, they want that all the the terrible acts that have been committed against the minorities should be those who have perpetrated those attacks should be caught and tried, and justice should be done. And it's a very simple list of demands, really. But the government of the day, the regime, the interim regime, has not bothered about them at all. It's never appeared in any of the Bangladesh paper. There is no discussion on this. So actually, the minorities in Bangladesh are feeling very troubled, very worried about it. That what are their rights and what are their rights? And
is this setting sort of a very dangerous precedence for the minorities, as you pointed out in the soundbite to the agency, that this is clearly a travesty of justice? So basically, it's not only about the legal battle that Chinmoy Krishnadas is going to fight, but there's a larger question of the judiciary per se in Bangladesh, the way, on what grounds they are going, is it?
Well, the judiciary is completely compromised, because the old judiciary was forced to resign. They were like surrounded by the so-called students and forced to resign. And these people have come in their place who are favorable to the interim regime. So that is one thing. So it is the judiciary that has been compromised. Secondly, they are avoiding a discussion on the rights of the minorities in Bangladesh. In fact, today you will be surprised to know that even the home advisor to the interim regime has said, oh, this is a majority Muslim country. Why should we take minorities in the police service? 1,500 applications for joining the police service from the minority communities have been rejected. And they don't want to take the minorities even in the government service. So this is creating a huge humanitarian crisis. It is a travesty of the international system of, respect for minorities, of all the laws of human rights that are there, that there's a complete, boycotting, a complete blanketing out of the demands of the minority community. And in fact, the only interest that the interim regime has in about the lawyer who died. But even in that lawyer's case, there was a committee set up to examine what happened and how he died. But that committee has resigned, saying this is too sensitive a matter, that we will not look into it at all. So you can imagine that there is really no option, no avenue. And I can only hope that the High Court, when the application for bail goes there, that they will give it a more sympathetic hearing than in the other courts. I mean, to show you how no justice is being done, when there was no lawyer appearing for Chinmoy Krishnadas Brahmachari in the Chattogram court, it was the duty of the local court to provide a lawyer. That's the government's duty. That if there is no lawyer available, the government has to provide it. But there was no question of that. The judge did not even ask for it. And the whole thing was adjourned, saying, oh, there's nobody here, so we can't have a hearing. So, this is the kind of ignoring of the legal situation, the penal code. All that is being ignored only because it is the Islamists who are ruling this interim regime, and Professor Muhammad Yunus has made an assurance to our Prime Minister that he will give priority to the treatment of the minorities. But he has not kept his promise at all, because the attacks against the minorities have continued and there is no way out for them. So I think we have to really mount a huge campaign to make sure that the minorities...
Do you see that in coming times, ma'am, this is happening? Because ISKCON Dhaka has condemned the move, first of all, the arrest itself. Now, this is clearly a far-gone legal battle for Chinmoy Dasa's lawyers also. But the larger question of the way things are being handled by the interim regime there on ground, the whole minority safety question, I think it's not only about their demands, it's about their main concerns, their basic right to life, right to live, right to food, right to earning, everything, livelihood.
Everything. I mean, I think it was all epitomized a few days ago. The National Security Advisor of the USA called Professor Mohammed Yunus and told him that they expect that in Bangladesh there should be stability, prosperity, and democracy. Actually, none of these three things exist right now in Bangladesh. There is absolutely no stability. There is no law and order because the police is not functioning. And even the military, which has been given police powers, is not able to control the situation. And there is no prosperity because the economy is in the total doldrums. All the factories are closed and people are trying to run across to the Indian border to seek jobs in India. So it's a very, very difficult situation. There's no democracy at all because the media is not even being allowed to write about what's happening to the minorities. I can tell you that, the media, for example, in Bangladesh, they were making a huge outcry against the Indian media, saying this is entirely Indian media propaganda. There is no such thing. The minorities are fine. There is nothing happening to them. And this is Indian media propaganda that something has happened to them. Then our Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri went there and as he said, he had very frank and candid and constructive discussions with the Bangladesh authorities. And the very next day, the Bangladesh government announced that, there are 88 cases of something that the minorities, they have been attacked and so on. There are 88 cases and 70 people have been arrested. Now, in one day, in 24 hours, after the local media had been going to town criticizing the Indian media propaganda, and now suddenly they themselves have admitted that, yes, there were 88. But of course, 88 is a very minuscule proportion of what has actually happened. And even their own newspapers reported that in a 15-day period, August 5 to 20th of this year, there were at least 1,608 attacks. So that shows, and the Hindu, Buddhist, Christian Unity Council has said there were more than 2,000. So in a 15-day period. So, and that's continuing, now their jobs are going, their economic livelihoods are going, and Professor Mohammed Yunus hasn't said a word about it. Not a word. On the contrary, the other advisors are talking about not giving jobs to the minority. I have not seen the situation prevailing anywhere like this, where the rights that they have enjoyed for more than 50 years, the minorities' right to practice religion, right to jobs, right to equality, right to no discrimination, all those are being taken away from them. Just in the matter of 150 days, And
so,
yes,
ma'am. Yes. So, think tanks like RRAG and of course India, the government here, we are closely following the news, monitoring the situation. But do you think that's enough as a former envoy, whether it's media gag or the way things are being handled, especially pertaining to minorities? There has to be a stop, and it's about a larger question of the credibility of the Yunus government, because the world is watching, and there have been reactions, but it doesn't seem to be working. They're all falling on deaf ears. What next?
I think that there will be action, and I think the world community is really getting up in arms. I think just last week there was a large group of Bangladeshi Hindus who, from all over the world, from Geneva, from USA, from London, from all over the world, who came and they they are very worried about the situation because their relatives are all in Bangladesh and they're getting a terrible treatment. So that is one thing. We also know that President-elect Donald Trump, who is going to be sworn in on the 20th of this month, has made a very strong statement describing the chaos in Bangladesh, describing the barbaric attacks on Hindus and Christians in Bangladesh. So obviously, the American government is going to be seized of this matter, and there is no doubt that this is an international human rights issue. And even, the UN Human Rights Office, who had been invited to Dhaka by this regime to, examine what they said was a huge loss of life during the last weeks of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's prime ministership in Bangladesh. And they said, there have been thousands of people who've been killed, and we want the Human Rights Commission to come and have a look. The Human Rights Commission office has sent a delegation twice. And both times, the delegation has said, we have not been given any evidence.
Okay.
provided any information at all. So even there's a complete lack of coordination, complete lack of seriousness, and all they want is control by the Islamist groups. And they're not to give any rights to the minorities. I think this matter should be raised again and again and again without any let-up till there is satisfaction and the rights of the minority are restored.
Yes, sir, but the interim government is definitely answerable on that front. Thank you very much, Ma'am Sikri, Ambassador Sikri, for joining us in this story. Thank you. Now let's move on to some more news and updates. India's Home Minister Amit Shah and Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan jointly launched the book titled Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh Through the Ages in National Capital, New Delhi. At the event, Home Minister Amit Shah emphasized the historical and cultural integration of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh with India, referencing 8,000-year-old ancient texts.
लगभग 8,000 साल के पुराने ग्रंथों में से तंवर साहब ने ढूंढ कर कश्मीर का जिक्र निकालकर यहां प्रस्तापित किया है। और जब एक ग्रंथ कश्मीर और झेलम की बात करते हैं तब कोई नहीं कह सकता कि कश्मीर किसका है। कश्मीर भारत का अविभाज्य अंग पहले भी था, आज भी है और हमेशा के लिए रहने वाला।
Still to come on DD India News Hour. Coming up next, can the Indian team turn the tables in Sydney? Next up is the preview of the final test of the Border Gavaskar Trophy.
The delicate balance between human and animal coexistence has become a growing problem. Finding sustainable ways to coexisting together and thriving in a rapidly changing environment.
Tell them not to panic. Instead, they should just stand completely still and let the lions walk past peacefully. This is how we show respect to the animal and in turn gain its trust.
After the plantation of lemon trees, the elephants stopped entering the fields. They pass by the field boundaries without entering.
Poaching gangs and trafficking gangs that go after these elephants and capture them, things like that. And that's something that we are all up against.
We should try to modify the human behavior through education and awareness.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Sakal Bhatt. Let's move on now. Maldives Foreign Affairs Minister Abdullah Khalil has arrived in New Delhi for a two-day official visit. He will be meeting India's External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar. According to the Ministry of External Affairs, the visit comes with an aim to work towards India-Maldives joint vision of a comprehensive economic and maritime security partnership. Now let's take a look at some other stories making news around the world. The US Commerce Department is considering new rules that would impose restrictions on Chinese drones, citing national security concerns. The department said that it is seeking public comments by March 4th on potential rules to safeguard the supply chain for drones. Italy's Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani on Thursday summons the Iranian ambassador to Rome over the detention of an Italian journalist, Cecilia Sala, travelled to Iran on December 13th on a journalist visa and was arrested on December 19th for violating law of the country. British rapper Stormzy was banned from driving for 9 months on Thursday after admitting he drove his Rolls-Royce through London while using his phone. The 31-year-old is known for bringing the grime genre of rap into the commercial mainstream. And hundreds of dinosaur footprints have been discovered in an Oxfordshire quarry, establishing it as a largest dinosaur trackway site in UK dating back to the Middle Jurassic period. The discovery includes 5 truckways imprinted in limestone, offering valuable evidences of the movements of 2 distinct dinosaur species. Let's take a look at other stories making news in India. India's Manipur experienced 2 earthquakes on Thursday, with the first hitting Churachandpur at the magnitude of 3.1 at 12:35 noon and the second striking Themglong at 6:52 p.m. Management authorities are regularly conducting awareness campaigns about the frequent quakes in India's northeastern states. India's Ministry of Home Affairs amended the Model Prison Manual 2016 and Model Prison and Correctional Services Act 2023 to address the issue of caste-based discrimination at the inmates. According to the new manual, prison authorities must now strictly prohibit caste-based discrimination, classification and segregation. India paid tributes to Manathu Padmanabhan Pillai, a freedom fighter and social reformer, on his birth anniversary on Thursday. Born in 1878 in the Indian state of Kerala, he founded the Nair Service Society to uplift the community, which is numerically and socially influential caste in Kerala. You're watching TT India News Hour. Now it's time for some sports news. Up first, India's Youth Affairs and Sports Ministry on Thursday announced the National Sports Awards 2024. Olympic medalist Manu Bakar, hockey player Harmanpreet Singh and chess world champion Gukesh D and para-athlete Praveen Kumar have been named the recipients of the prestigious Major Dhyan Chand Khel Ratna.
Olympic medalist Manu Bhaker, hockey player Harmanpreet Singh, chess world champion D. Gukesh and para-athlete Praveen Kumar will be honoured with the Major Dhyan Chand Khel Ratna Award. Gukesh became the youngest world chess champion in Singapore in December. Bhaker had won 2 bronze medals at the Paris Olympics. Harmanpreet had led India to a bronze medal in men's hockey at the same games. Praveen had won gold in men's high jump T64 discipline at the Paris Paralympics.
I would like to thank the Government of India, Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji and Honorable Sports Minister for their recognition. This award will motivate me to work even harder and achieve more laurels for the country in 2025. And this means a lot to me and my family and my team.
The Sports Ministry also named 32 athletes for the Arjuna Award, including 17 para-athletes. The list includes athletes Jyoti Yaraji, Anu Rani, boxer Neetu Gangas, Sweetie Bura, chess player Vantika Agarwal, hockey player Salima Tete, Abhishek, Sanjay, Jarmanpreet Singh, Sukhjit Singh, para-archer Rakesh Kumar, para-athlete Preeti Pal, Dipti Jivanji, Ajit Singh, Sachin Sarjirao Khilari, Dharamveer, Pranab Surma, H. Hokato Seema, Simran, Navdeep, para-badminton player Nitesh Kumar, Thulasimiti Murugesan, Nitya Sri Sumati Sivan, Manisha Ramadas, para-judo player Kapil Parmar, para-shooter Mona Agarwal, Rubina Francis, shooter Swapnil Suresh Kusle, Sarabjot Singh, squash player Abhay Singh, swimmer Sajan Prakash and wrestler Aman. These athletes not only set benchmarks for excellence but also inspired a new generation to pursue sports with passion and resilience. Their accolades reflect India's robust talent pool and the country's commitment to nurturing sporting excellence through sustained investment and support. Sports Desk, DD India.
On to cricket now. India and Australia are all set to face off in the 5th and final test match of the Border Gavaskar Trophy at the Sydney Cricket Ground starting Friday. With Australia leading the series 2-1, India must secure a win to level the series and retain the prestigious trophy they've held since 2017. Here's more.
The highly entertaining series between India and Australia has reached its final destination. Australia have one hand on a trophy that has eluded them for years, while India must win or draw the match in Sydney to avoid relinquishing the prestigious trophy. The reports of friction inside India's dressing room adds an extra layer of challenge as India seek series-leveling win. Indian cricket team head coach Gautam Gambhir on Thursday broke silence on dressing room leaks that has been making headlines in the pre-match press conference. Gambhir said that the debates between players and coaches should remain in dressing room.
ऐसा नहीं है कि यहाँ पर मैं कोई इंडिविजुअल्स के बारे में बात करूँ बिकॉज अल्टीमेटली आप एज ए टीम जीतते हो और एज ए टीम ही हारते हैं और जब आप अपने देश के लिए खेल रहे होते हैं तो हर व्यक्ति यही कोशिश करता है कि अपना मैक्सिमम कंट्रीब्यूट कर सके तो वो इम्पोर्टेंट और ऐसा नहीं है कि जो डिबेट एक प्लेयर और कोच के बीच में होती है वो उनके ही बीच में रहनी चाहिए आप सिर्फ रिजल्ट देखते हैं और फॉर्चुनेटली अनफॉर्चुनेटली ये स्पोर्ट सिर्फ रिजल्ट के लिए ही जाना जाता है बट कॉन्वर्सेशन जो होती है वो दो इंडिविजुअल्स के बीच में और वो ड्रेसिंग रूम के बीच में वो वहीं तक रहनी चाहिए.
For India, Yashasvi Jaiswal has been a standout performer, emerging as India's leading run scorer in the series. Additionally, the bowling prowess of Jasprit Bumrah remains a vital asset for the visitors. Captain Pat Cummins continues to spearhead the bowling attack, while seasoned batsmen like Steve Smith and Marnus Labuschagne are pivotal to Australia's batting strength. With Akashdeep ruled out with a stiff back, either Prasidh Krishna or Harshit Rana could make their way to the playing 11. Australia has announced a change as well, with all-rounder Pio Webster set to make his Test debut, replacing Mitchell Marsh. The SCG has been a challenging venue for India. With only one win in 13 Tests, the sole victory came in 1978, and since then they have faced 5 losses and 7 draws at this ground. Can India stage a comeback to level the series, or will Australia, who are high on confidence, claim the Border Gavaskar Trophy after 10 long years? India's top order needs to step up and ease the pressure on bowlers. With WTC finals chances hanging by a thread, the stage is set for a match at the iconic Sydney Cricket Stadium. With cameraman Mukesh, Meher Raj Singh for DD India.
Staying with cricket, Sri Lanka secured a 7-run win in the third and final T20 match against New Zealand in Nelson on Thursday. Sri Lanka posted 218 for 5, with Kusal Perera delivering an excellent knock of 101 runs of 46 deliveries, registering the fastest ton by Sri Lankan in T20 internationals. In response, New Zealand could just manage 211 for the loss of 7 wickets, thus losing the match to Lanka. Well, that's all we have for you in this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and abroad on DD India mobile app. This app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. And we will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Sakal Bhattan from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for tuning in. DD India News Hour.